We moved into the house in early October, just 3 weeks after our daughter was born. The timing was terrible, but we didn't have much choice. Our apartment lease had ended, the building had a serious mold problem, and the landlord wanted almost double the rent to renew for another year. When the listing for the little blue house on Willow Creek Road appeared online, it looked almost too good to be true. 3 bedrooms, fenced backyard, a quiet neighborhood, and a monthly payment that was cheaper than our old apartment. The only thing that gave me pause was the note buried near the bottom of the listing. Previous occupant passed away peacefully on the property. When I asked the landlord about it, she waved the concern away with a tired smile. "Mr. Holloway was 81, she said while unlocking the front door for us. Retired railroad worker, lived here alone for years. He died in his sleep about a month ago." Emma squeezed my hand, and I could tell she was already imagining our daughter growing up in a house with a yard instead of a cramped apartment. "Was anyone with him?" I asked. The landlord hesitated for just a second. "No." The mail carrier noticed newspapers piling up and called for a welfare check. That answer should have bothered me more than it did. At the time, I was too exhausted to care. The house smelled faintly of fresh paint and lemon cleaner when we moved in, but underneath that was another scent. Something older. Dust, wood, and the lingering odor of a place that had been closed up for weeks. Mr. Holloway's house sat directly next door. It was a small white bungalow with dark green shutters and a narrow front porch. The curtains were drawn, the grass had grown a little too high, and a single porch light remained on every night, casting a weak yellow glow across the empty driveway. The landlord noticed me looking at it. "His son is supposed to come clear it out eventually," she said. "Hasn't happened yet." That first evening, while Emma unpacked baby clothes in the nursery, I stood at the kitchen window and watched the empty house next door. The porch light flickered once. Then it stayed steady. I remember thinking how strange it was that no one had bothered to turn it off. The first 2 weeks disappeared into a blur of sleepless nights. If you've never had a newborn, it's hard to explain the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones. Time stops feeling linear. You measure life in feeding schedules, diaper changes, and the number of minutes you managed to sleep before the next cry pulled you awake again. Emma handled most of the nighttime feedings because she was breastfeeding, but I tried to take over whenever I could. Around midnight, I would usually pace the hallway with our daughter tucked against my shoulder while Emma got an hour or 2 of uninterrupted sleep. The baby monitor became my constant companion. It was a newer model with video, temperature sensors, and encrypted audio. I had spent extra money on it specifically because I didn't want interference from neighbors' devices. Every night, the monitor sat on my nightstand with the screen glowing softly in the dark. Every night, I checked it obsessively. Every night, the nursery looked exactly the same. Our daughter asleep in her crib, the rocking chair in the corner, and the moonlight spilling through the curtains. Until the night of October 17th. I woke up because of static. Not the normal hiss of a monitor adjusting its signal. This was loud, sharp, and sudden enough that it sounded like someone had crumpled aluminum foil directly beside my ear. I blinked awake and looked at the clock. 2:13 a.m. Emma was asleep beside me, one arm stretched across the empty space where the baby usually slept during feedings. The monitor screen showed the nursery in grainy night vision. Everything looked normal. Then the audio crackled again. A man's voice came through the speaker. Low, elderly, calm. "She's awake." Every muscle in my body locked. I stared at the monitor, certain I had misheard it. The video feed still showed our daughter lying motionless in her crib. The voice came again, a little clearer this time. "You should check on her." I snatched the monitor off the nightstand so fast that Emma stirred. "What is it?" she mumbled. I think someone's in the nursery." That woke her instantly. I grabbed the flashlight I kept beside the bed and rushed into the hallway. The nursery door was closed, exactly where we had left it. No sounds came from inside. I pushed the door open. The room was empty. Our daughter was asleep, one tiny hand curled beside her face. The rocking chair sat motionless in the corner. The closet door was shut. The window was locked from the inside. I checked under the crib, behind the curtains, even inside the closet. Nothing. When I looked back down at the monitor in my hand, the audio meter was still flickering as if it were picking up sound. Then the speaker whispered, "Not yet." I nearly dropped it. The voice sounded like it was standing directly beside the monitor. I turned in a full circle, shining the flashlight into every corner of the room. "Who's there?" Silence. Then a soft burst of static. And the connection went dead. The screen froze for 3 seconds before the video feed returned. Our daughter was still asleep. Emma found me standing in the nursery with the flashlight. "There's no one here," she said, trying to sound reassuring. "You didn't hear it." "Hear what?" I replayed the monitor's recorded audio, but the only thing on the recording was static. No voice, no whisper, nothing. Emma rubbed her eyes. "You've slept maybe 4 hours in the last 2 days." "I know what I heard." She stepped closer and lowered her voice so she wouldn't wake the baby. Could it have been interference? Another monitor nearby. I looked toward the window. The empty house next door was visible through a gap in the curtains. His porch light was still on. "Maybe," I said, though I didn't believe it. Emma touched my arm. "Come back to bed." I nodded, but before leaving the nursery, I checked the monitor settings again. Channel locked. Encryption enabled. No paired devices detected. Exactly the way I had configured it. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Around 4:30 a.m., I got up and made coffee. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling wood. I stood at the kitchen sink, staring out at Mr. Holloway's house. The porch light was off now. I was certain it had been on an hour earlier. As I watched, a figure passed behind the front window. Just a shadow. 1 second it was there, and the next it was gone. I set the coffee mug down and stepped closer to the glass. The house was dark. No movement. No lights. I told myself it was probably a reflection from our own kitchen. Then I noticed something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The front door of the empty house was slightly open. Not wide, just enough to leave a narrow black gap. I stared at it for a long moment, trying to remember whether it had been closed before. I was almost sure it had. Behind me, the baby monitor crackled softly on the kitchen counter. I turned toward it. For a second, there was only static. Then the same elderly voice spoke one more time. Quiet, almost conversational. "I told you she was awake." I looked at the monitor screen. Our daughter was no longer asleep. She was sitting upright in her crib, staring directly at the camera. And behind her, reflected in the dark nursery window, stood the silhouette of an old man wearing a railroad cap. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The monitor screen showed our daughter sitting upright in her crib, her small hands gripping the rails as she stared directly into the camera. She was only 3 weeks old, far too young to sit up on her own. And behind her, reflected in the dark nursery window, stood the silhouette of an old man. The railroad cap was unmistakable. I grabbed the monitor and ran. The hallway felt longer than it had a few minutes earlier, and every step seemed muffled, as if the house were wrapped in thick fabric. When I reached the nursery, I threw the door open so hard it hit the wall. The room was empty. Our daughter was lying on her back, asleep again. The rocking chair was still. The curtains hadn't moved. I swung the flashlight toward the window. Nothing was reflected there except my own pale face and the beam of the light. My hands were shaking badly enough that I almost dropped the monitor. I looked down at the screen. The reflection was gone, but the video feed was still wrong. The angle had changed. The camera was mounted on a shelf above the changing table, pointed toward the crib. I had installed it myself. Now it was tilted several degrees to the left, showing part of the closet that shouldn't have been visible. I stepped closer to check it. The camera was warm, not slightly warm from being powered on, body temperature warm, as if someone had been holding it. A soft creak came from the hallway behind me. I turned instantly. The hallway was empty. Then I heard it again. Creak. This time it came from downstairs. Slow footsteps crossed the living room beneath the nursery, one board groaning after another in a steady rhythm. Someone was walking through my house. I looked back at our daughter. She was still asleep, completely unaware. "Emma," I whispered into the hallway. No answer. I hurried to our bedroom and found the bed empty. The bathroom light was off. The door stood open. "Emma," still nothing. Cold knot formed in my stomach. I took the stairs down as quietly as I could, flashlight in one hand and the monitor in the other. The living room was dark except for the weak glow of the streetlight filtering through the curtains. The footsteps had stopped. Then, from the kitchen, I heard a cabinet door close. I moved toward the sound. Every instinct was telling me to turn around and get back upstairs, but the thought of someone being inside the house with my wife and newborn was worse than the fear. I reached the kitchen doorway and froze. Emma was standing at the sink with her back to me. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost gave out. "Jesus, you scared me," I whispered. She didn't turn around. "I heard someone downstairs," I said, stepping into the kitchen. "Did you come down here a minute ago?" Still no response. Something felt wrong immediately. Emma was wearing the same gray sweater she'd gone to bed in, but her posture was strange. Too stiff, shoulders slightly hunched, head tilted downward as if she were listening to something in the sink. "Emma," very slowly, she raised one hand and pointed toward the window over the sink. I followed her finger. Mr. Holloway's house was directly visible from there. The front door was still open, and an old man was standing on the porch. Even from across the yard, I could see the railroad cap. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there, looking directly at our kitchen window. A burst of static exploded from the baby monitor in my hand. Then the elderly voice spoke again, louder than before. "That isn't your wife." Every part of me went cold. The woman standing at the sink began to turn her head. Not her body, just her head. It rotated far too slowly, stopping halfway until one eye became visible in profile. The eye was completely black. I stumbled backward, knocking into a chair. At the exact same moment, a scream came from upstairs. Emma's scream. From the bedroom, the woman in the kitchen smiled without fully turning around. The monitor crackled. "Run!" I ran. I bolted out of the kitchen and up the stairs, taking them two at a time. Emma screamed again, and this time I heard our daughter crying with her. When I reached the bedroom, Emma was standing beside the bed, clutching the baby against her chest. "There was someone in the nursery," she gasped. I woke up and heard the monitor talking. I looked behind her. The nursery door was open. The room beyond was dark. Emma's eyes widened when she saw my face. "What's wrong?" I couldn't answer, because downstairs, from the kitchen, I heard the sound of a chair scraping across the floor. Then slow footsteps began moving toward the staircase. One step, another, another. The baby monitor in my hand hissed with static, and the old man's voice whispered directly into my ear, "Don't let it come upstairs." And from the darkness below us, a woman's voice, wearing Emma's voice perfectly, called out sweetly, "Honey, why are you hiding from me?" The footsteps stopped at the bottom of the staircase. The entire house went silent, except for our daughter's crying and the faint static hissing from the baby monitor in my hand. Then Emma's voice floated up from downstairs. "Honey, why are you hiding from me?" The real Emma was standing right beside me, clutching the baby so tightly that her knuckles had gone white, her face drained of color. "That's not me," she whispered. Another step creaked below us. Slow, deliberate. "You forgot your coffee in the kitchen," the voice called. "Come back downstairs." It sounded perfect. The same tone Emma used when she was trying not to wake the baby. The same slight rasp in her voice from being exhausted. The baby monitor crackled. The old man's voice spoke over the static. "Lock the nursery." I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the nursery door and slammed it shut, turning the small brass lock with shaking fingers. Emma backed away down the hallway, holding the baby against her shoulder while trying to keep her from crying. The voice downstairs laughed softly. Not Emma's laugh. Something was wrong with it. Too slow, too empty. "That won't help," it said. A floorboard groaned halfway up the staircase. I stared at the dark stairwell. No one was visible, but I could hear breathing. Deep, wet coming from just below the landing. Emma whispered, "Call 911. I pulled my phone out and froze. No signal. Not one bar. "That's impossible," I muttered. "I had service a minute ago." The monitor hissed again. "It cuts the signal when it's close." I looked down at the screen. For the first time, I saw something other than the nursery. The video feed had switched to a black and white image of the staircase below us. A figure was standing there. A woman. She looked exactly like Emma from behind. The same sweater, the same hair tied loosely at the neck. She was facing away from the camera, standing motionless on the third step. Then she began climbing, one step at a time. The real Emma saw the screen and covered her mouth with her free hand. "Oh my God!" The figure reached the top step. Very slowly, she turned toward the camera. It was Emma's face, but the eyes were completely black. The monitor went dead. At the exact same moment, a hand appeared around the corner of the stairwell. Pale fingers curled over the wall. Then the woman stepped into view. She was identical to Emma. Same height, same clothes, same exhausted expression. If my wife hadn't been standing beside me, I would have believed it was her. The thing smiled. "There you are," it said warmly. The baby started screaming. The copy looked toward the sound with unnatural interest. "Give her to me. You've been awake for days. I can take care of her." Emma backed away until she hit the bedroom wall. I stepped in front of her. "What do you want?" The thing tilted its head. "I live here." Its voice shifted for a split second, becoming the elderly man's voice before snapping back to Emma's. "Mr. Holloway let me stay after he died." A cold wave passed through me. "What are you?" The smile widened. "I'm what's left when someone answers the voice on the monitor." The hallway lights flickered. For one heartbeat, the thing's appearance glitched. I saw another face beneath Emma's. A pale, elderly woman with sunken eyes and gray hair hanging in wet strands. Then it was Emma again. The baby monitor crackled back to life. This time, the old man sounded urgent. "It's wearing one of the previous owners. Don't let it touch the child." The copy's expression darkened. "He talks too much." Took a step toward us. I grabbed the heavy floor lamp beside the bedroom door and swung it with both hands. The metal base smashed into its shoulder. The impact felt wrong. Not like hitting a person. More like striking a sack filled with wet cloth and bones. The thing staggered backward, and for a second its body folded in a way no human body should. One arm bent too far, and its neck twisted almost halfway around before snapping back into place. Then it looked at me and smiled again. "That hurt," it said politely. The hallway lights went out. Darkness swallowed everything except the weak glow of the baby monitor. In that dim light, I saw movement all around us. Shadows were standing in the hallway. Not one or two, at least 5 figures, all motionless, all watching the bedroom door. Some were tall, some short, and one of them looked like a child. The copy stepped back into the darkness and became impossible to distinguish from the others. Emma was crying silently now, trying not to make noise. I whispered, "We're getting out of the house." The monitor hissed. "Not through the front door," the old man warned. "It's waiting there." A soft knock came from the nursery. 3 taps. Tap, tap, tap. Then a little girl's voice whispered through the locked door. "Can I come out now?" Emma's eyes widened in horror. Our daughter was still in her arms. The knocking came again, louder this time. Tap, tap, tap. And the child's voice whispered, "Please, it's dark in here." The knocking came again. Tap, tap, tap. Emma clutched our daughter so tightly that the baby let out another frightened cry. We both stared at the nursery door, unable to look away. The little girl's voice sounded about 6 or 7 years old. Soft, polite, completely wrong. "Please, it's dark in here." The real nursery was empty. I had checked it myself less than 10 minutes earlier. There was no child inside that room except the newborn in Emma's arms. The baby monitor crackled. The old man's voice spoke immediately. "Do not open the door." The shadows in the hallway shifted. I could barely make them out in the darkness, but they were closer now. One of the taller figures stood directly beside the staircase, while the smaller child-shaped shadow had moved near the nursery entrance. Another knock. Tap, tap, tap. This time it was followed by a small sniffle. "Mom? I can't find the light." Emma made a broken sound in the back of her throat. "It knows I'm a mother." The voice downstairs called out again in Emma's tone. "Why are you keeping her from me?" A second voice answered from the nursery, the little girl again. "She's being mean." The two voices were talking to each other. My skin crawled. I grabbed Emma's wrist and pulled her toward the master bedroom. "Inside. Now." We backed into the room and I slammed the door shut, locking it. The baby was crying hard now, and Emma sank onto the edge of the bed, trying to soothe her while fighting her own panic. I shoved a dresser against the door. The hallway went quiet, too quiet. Then I heard slow footsteps approaching from outside the bedroom. One step, another. They stopped directly in front of the door. A woman's voice, still wearing Emma's voice perfectly, spoke from the other side. "You're scaring the baby." I held my breath. "Let me in, and I'll help you." The doorknob turned gently, once, twice, then it stopped. The baby monitor hissed with static, and the old man whispered, "It can't cross a locked door unless you invite it." A soft laugh came from the hallway. "He's lying," the thing said. "He invited me years ago." I looked down at the monitor screen. The video feed had returned, but it wasn't showing the nursery anymore. It was showing Mr. Holloway's house next door. The image looked like live footage from inside his dark living room. The camera slowly panned across dusty furniture, framed family photos, and a recliner facing a silent television. Then it stopped. An old man was sitting in the chair. Railroad cap, gray flannel shirt, thin hands resting on the armrests. Mr. Holloway looked directly into the camera. His lips moved. The monitor speaker crackled, and his voice came through clearly. "I'm not dead." Emma looked up sharply. "What?" On the screen, the old man leaned closer. "It only uses dead voices when the real person is gone." A cold shock ran through me. "If you're alive, where are you?" His eyes darted toward something off camera. "In the basement of the house next door." The bedroom door rattled violently. The thing outside had heard him. Its voice lost the gentle tone completely. "Be quiet, Walter." Mr. Holloway flinched. "It keeps me where it can watch your house," he whispered quickly. "There's a tunnel between the basements. That's how it moves without being seen." The baby monitor image suddenly distorted with heavy static. For a split second, I saw a concrete room with a single hanging bulb and Mr. Holloway chained to a chair. Then the feed snapped back to his face. "Listen to me carefully," he said. "At 3 a.m. it has to return to the empty house for a few minutes. That's your only chance to get out." I checked the clock on the nightstand. 2:41 a.m. 19 minutes. The thing outside the door began scratching the wood with something sharp. Long, slow scrapes. "He's trying to steal you from me," it hissed. Mr. Holloway spoke faster. "When it leaves, go through the backyard. Don't use the front door, and whatever you hear behind you, don't turn around." The scratching stopped. Silence filled the hallway. Then a new sound came from the nursery. The rocking chair had started moving. We could hear it through the wall. Creak, forward, creak, back, creak, forward. Emma buried her face against the baby's head, trying not to cry. The monitor showed Mr. Holloway staring past the camera in terror. "It's coming," he whispered. The hallway floorboards groaned. Not footsteps this time. Something heavier, something crawling. A shadow slid under the bedroom door, stretching across the carpet toward the bed. It moved like liquid, but I could see the outline of fingers forming at the end of it. The monitor erupted with static so loud I almost dropped it. Mr. Holloway shouted through the noise, "Don't let it touch your shadow." At that exact moment, the bedroom lamp flickered on by itself, and the shadow on the floor lunged toward us. The last thing I heard before the lights went out again was the little girl laughing from the nursery and whispering, "It found you." The shadow hit the edge of the bed and stopped. Not because it couldn't move farther, because it was looking at us. The darkness on the floor rippled like black water, and the finger-shaped tendrils curled and uncurled inches from my shoes. The baby monitor hissed with static, but Mr. Holloway's warning kept echoing in my head. Don't let it touch your shadow. The room was almost completely dark now. The only light came from the hallway, where something was blocking most of the doorway. A silhouette, too tall, too thin. It was standing just outside the bedroom, perfectly still. Emma whispered, "What do we do?" I looked down. The shadow from the doorway was stretching across the carpet toward us, merging with the shadow of the dresser I had shoved against the door. If it reached the bed, it would reach our shadows. I grabbed the lamp from the nightstand and yanked the cord free. The bulb flickered once and died, but I still had the heavy metal base. "Stay on the bed," I whispered. The silhouette outside tilted its head. Then it spoke in my voice. "Ethan, you're making this harder than it needs to be." Emma's eyes widened. It sounded exactly like me. The shadow surged forward another few inches. I jumped onto the bed beside Emma, pulling my feet up just before the darkness reached the floor where I had been standing. The baby monitor crackled. Mr. Holloway sounded panicked now. "It's trying to connect your shadow to the doorway. If it touches, it can pull you through." "Pull us where?" I whispered. Static swallowed the answer. The silhouette outside the room took one slow step forward. Moonlight from the hallway caught its face for a split second. It was me. Not just similar, perfectly me. Same height, same hair, same terrified expression. The copy looked at Emma and smiled gently. "You should come with me," it said. "He's already marked." Emma buried her face against the baby's head and shook her head violently. The copy sighed. "I was hoping you'd make this easier." The shadow on the floor began climbing the side of the bed. Black tendrils crawled over the blanket like ink spreading through fabric. Wherever they touched, the material turned gray and brittle. I swung the lamp base down on the shadow. The impact sent a shock through my arms, and the darkness recoiled as if it had been burned. The copy's expression changed instantly. For the first time, it looked angry. "Walter told you too much." The baby monitor screamed with static. Then Mr. Holloway's voice burst through. "The railroad lantern. In the closet." I stared at the monitor. "What?" "Your bedroom closet. Left side, under the shelf." "Hurry." The shadow was already creeping back onto the bed. I jumped off the mattress, keeping my body between the darkness and Emma, and lunged for the closet. The copy moved at the same time, stepping fully into the room. It moved wrong, too smoothly, like its joints weren't connected the way a human body's should be. I tore open the closet door and dropped to my knees. Under the shelf, buried beneath a pile of old blankets left by the previous owner, was a rusted railroad lantern. I grabbed it. The metal was ice cold. "Now what?" I shouted. Mr. Holloway answered immediately. "Light it. There's no fuel. Light it." The copy was only a few feet away now, and the shadow had reached the edge of Emma's blanket. I flipped the lantern open with shaking hands. There was no wick, no oil, nothing that should have worked. Still, I struck the old flint wheel on the side. A blue flame burst to life inside the lantern. The effect was instant. The shadow on the bed recoiled violently, pulling away from Emma like it had been burned with acid. The copy staggered backward, raising an arm to shield its face. The blue light filled the room, and for a split second I saw what the copy really looked like. The skin wasn't skin at all. It was made of overlapping shadows, and beneath them were dozens of faces pressing against the surface. Men, women, children, all trapped inside it. One of the faces opened its mouth and screamed silently. Emma gasped. The copy's voice distorted, becoming a chorus of different voices speaking at once. "Put it out." I held the lantern higher. The blue flame grew brighter. The thing shrank back toward the doorway, and the shadows on the floor pulled away from us, retreating into the hallway like a tide going out. Mr. Holloway spoke through the monitor, breathing hard. "That lantern was mine. It belonged to my father before me. It keeps them from holding a shape." The copy stood in the hallway now, its form flickering between my appearance and something tall and featureless. "You can't keep it lit forever." it hissed. I looked at the clock. 2:52 a.m. 8 minutes until 3 o'clock. The copy seemed to notice me looking. Then it smiled. You think you only have to survive 8 minutes. The hallway behind it began to darken, the shadows gathering into a deeper black than the rest of the house. Something was moving inside that darkness. Something much larger than the copy. The baby monitor crackled. Mr. Holloway's voice dropped to a whisper. Oh no! What is it? A long pause. Then he said the words that made my blood run cold. It brought the real thing with it. The darkness behind the copy moved. At first, it looked like the hallway was simply getting darker. But then I realized the shadows were flowing inward, gathering into a shape that was far too large to fit inside a normal house. Mr. Holloway whispered through the monitor. It brought the real thing with it. The copy stepped aside, not out of fear, out of respect. The blue flame in the railroad lantern flickered violently, and the temperature in the room dropped so fast that I could see my breath. Frost began creeping across the bedroom window in thin white veins. Emma pulled the baby closer. What is it? No one answered, because the thing in the hallway was finally emerging. It had to crouch to fit beneath the ceiling. Long gray arms reached almost to the floor, and its body looked wrapped in layers of moving shadow that never settled into a fixed shape. Where a face should have been, there was only a smooth black surface that seemed to absorb the lantern light. The copy stood beside it like a child standing next to a parent. Then the faceless thing spoke. Not with a normal voice. The sound came from everywhere at once. The hallway, the walls, the floor beneath us. You kept the lantern. Mr. Holloway's breathing became ragged through the monitor. I should have destroyed it. The faceless thing ignored him. It tilted its head toward me, and I felt a pressure inside my skull, like invisible fingers turning my thoughts over one by one. Thomas carried that lantern when he came downstairs. My father. I tightened my grip on the handle. What did you do to him? The black surface where its face should have been rippled. Then, slowly, features began forming. My father's eyes, his nose, his mouth. He smiled with his face. He opened the door for me. Emma made a frightened sound. The copy looked at me with my own face and added softly, just like you will. The lantern flared brighter, and both of them recoiled slightly. That was the first sign they could actually be hurt. I raised it higher. Stay back. The faceless thing laughed. A deep, echoing sound that made the walls vibrate. You think the lantern protects you. It lifted one long arm and pointed toward the nursery. The locked door began to shake. Once, twice. Then something on the other side started pounding against it. Bang. The little girl screamed, Mom, let me out. Emma's instincts took over immediately. She started toward the nursery, but I caught her arm. Don't. She sounds terrified. That's not a child. The pounding became frantic. Bang, bang, bang. Mom, please. It's in here with me. The faceless thing watched Emma carefully. It was testing her. Mr. Holloway spoke urgently through the monitor. It's trying to make her open the door. Once she invites it in, the lantern won't matter anymore. Emma was crying now, torn between terror and the instinct to protect a child. The copy took a step toward her. You know what it feels like when your baby cries, it said gently. How can you ignore another child begging for help? The nursery door suddenly went silent. For one horrible second, there was no sound at all. Then a tiny voice whispered through the wood, so soft I almost didn't hear it. Mom! It's standing behind me. Emma broke. She lunged for the door. I grabbed her around the waist just as her hand reached for the lock. No! She struggled against me. Let me go. What if there's really someone in there? The faceless thing smiled with my father's face. There is. The nursery lock clicked by itself. The door began to open inward. A thin line of darkness appeared in the gap. The lantern flame turned from blue to a violent white. And for the first time, I heard our daughter crying from inside the nursery. Emma went completely still in my arms. We both looked down at the baby she was holding. Our daughter was asleep against her shoulder. But the crying from the nursery was unmistakably the same cry. The door opened another inch. A tiny hand appeared in the gap, newborn-sized, pale. It gripped the edge of the door and pulled. Emma whispered, "Oh God!" The faceless thing spoke softly. It learned her voice already. The newborn hand began dragging itself farther through the opening, followed by the outline of a small arm that looked wrong somehow. Too thin, too long. The baby monitor erupted with static. Then Mr. Holloway shouted, 3 a.m. It has to go back now. I looked at the clock. 2 hours, 59 minutes, and 47 seconds. The faceless thing turned toward the hallway. For the first time, it seemed reluctant. The shadows around it began pulling backward, as if something outside the house was calling it away. The copy looked between me and the nursery door. Then it smiled one last time. "We'll finish this tomorrow night." The hallway darkness collapsed inward. The faceless thing dissolved into shadow, and the copy was dragged backward with it, its body stretching unnaturally before vanishing completely. At the same instant, the nursery door slammed shut. The pounding stopped. The crying stopped. Everything stopped. The clock changed to 3 a.m., and from somewhere deep beneath the house, I heard a heavy door close with a sound that echoed through the foundation like distant thunder. The baby monitor crackled one final time. Mr. Holloway whispered, "You survived the first night." Then the screen went black. The house was silent after 3 a.m. Not normal silence, the kind that comes after traffic dies down or the wind stops, but a heavy, unnatural stillness that made every small sound feel too loud. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, still holding our daughter, staring at the nursery door as if she expected it to open again at any second. I kept the railroad lantern lit on the nightstand. Its white-blue flame burned steadily now, and the room felt slightly warmer while it was on. Every time I looked away from it, I felt exposed. The baby monitor remained black. No video, no audio, no static, just a dead screen. "Do you think it's over?" Emma whispered. I looked toward the hallway. No, that answer came too quickly, but we both knew it was true. The copy had said, "We'll finish this tomorrow night." Something that confident wasn't going to disappear after a single failed attempt. We didn't sleep. Around 3:12 a.m., our daughter finally settled into a deep sleep, and Emma laid her carefully in the bassinet beside the bed. Neither of us was willing to put her back in the nursery. I checked my phone again. The signal had returned. 3 bars, as if nothing had happened. I started dialing 911, but before the call connected, the railroad lantern flickered. Once, twice. Then the flame leaned sharply toward the floor, as if a strong wind were blowing upward from beneath the house. A second later, we heard it, a metallic click from downstairs. Emma looked at me. What was that? I already knew. The basement door. The house had a small, unfinished basement that was accessed through a door off the kitchen. I had checked it during move-in, concrete walls, old shelves, a water heater, and not much else. But now the lantern was reacting to it. At 3:17 a.m., the basement door opened. We heard the hinges creak slowly, followed by a soft thud as the door hit the wall. Then came footsteps, not the heavy, dragging steps from earlier. These were human, careful, measured. Someone was walking across the kitchen floor. Emma grabbed my arm. "Don't go down there. I have to see who it is. What if it's that thing?" I looked at the lantern. The flame was still pointing downward. "It's not the same thing." I wasn't sure why I believed that, but the feeling was strong enough that I couldn't ignore it. I picked up the lantern and the flashlight, then eased the bedroom door open. The hallway was empty. No shadows. No child-shaped figure near the nursery. No copy wearing my face. For the first time since 2:13, the upstairs felt like a normal house. The footsteps downstairs stopped. A man's voice called softly from the kitchen. "Ethan?" I froze. It wasn't the faceless thing. It wasn't the copy. It was Mr. Holloway. Emma heard it too. Her eyes widened. "That's him." The voice came again, a little weaker. "Ethan, I need your help." I started down the stairs before Emma could stop me. The kitchen was dimly lit by the moonlight coming through the window. The back door was closed. The basement door stood wide open, and Mr. Holloway was sitting on the floor beside it. He looked much older than he had on the monitor. His railroad cap was gone. His gray hair was damp with sweat, and there were deep bruises around both wrists, as if he had been wearing restraints for a long time. When he saw the lantern, relief flooded his face. "You found it." I kept my distance. "How did you get into the house?" "The tunnel collapsed when the red door closed for the night. I managed to get out before it sealed again." Emma came halfway down the stairs but stayed where she could still see the bedroom. "You said you were in the basement next door." "I was. There's a passage under both houses." He looked toward the open basement doorway. "But it's changed." The lantern flame bent even harder downward. Mr. Holloway noticed it immediately. "Close that door." "Why?" "Because it's still open." A cold feeling spread through me. "The red door." He nodded. "It closes every night at 3, but it doesn't stay closed anymore. Your father damaged something when he escaped." The word escaped hit me hard. "You knew my father survived?" Mr. Holloway looked away. "I helped him get out." My pulse spiked. "What?" "He came through the tunnel in 2003. He was injured, terrified, and convinced something was following him. I told him never to return." "Then why did he?" Mr. Holloway's expression darkened. "Because the voices don't stop when you leave." The basement stairs creaked. All three of us looked toward the darkness below. Something had moved. Mr. Holloway struggled to his feet. "Close the door. Now." I stepped toward it, but before I reached the frame, a sound drifted up from the basement. A woman crying. Soft, broken. Emma went rigid behind me. The crying stopped. Then a voice whispered from the darkness. "Emma, please help me." Emma's face went white. "That's my mother." Mr. Holloway grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "Don't let her go down there." The voice came again, clearer this time. "Emma, I'm trapped. It won't let me leave." Emma took one step down the stairs before I blocked her path. "No, that's her voice. It's doing the same thing it did with my dad." Tears filled her eyes. "What if it's really her?" The basement light flickered on by itself. A weak yellow glow spilled up the stairs, revealing the top few steps. And standing just below the landing was a woman in a hospital gown. She looked exactly like Emma's mother, who had died of cancer 2 years earlier. She was crying. And when she looked up at us, she whispered, "Emma, why did you leave me here?" Emma made a sound I had never heard from her before. It wasn't a scream. It was the sound of someone recognizing a voice they had spent years grieving. The woman standing on the basement stairs looked exactly like her mother. The same thin face, the same dark hair, even the small silver cross necklace she had worn during the final months of her illness. And she was crying. "Emma, why did you leave me here?" Emma took another step forward before I caught her wrist. "Look at her feet," Mr. Holloway whispered. I forced myself to look. The woman's hospital gown hung just above the ankles. Her feet weren't touching the stairs. They hovered an inch above the concrete. Emma saw it too, and the color drained from her face. The woman noticed us staring. Her expression changed for a split second. Something sharp and hungry flickered beneath the grief. Then she looked like Emma's mother again. "Please," she whispered. "It hurts." The basement light buzzed overhead, flickering weakly. Mr. Holloway stepped in front of the open doorway, putting himself between Emma and the stairs. "You need to close the door." The woman's head snapped toward him. "Walter." The way she said his name made my skin crawl. "You told him about the lantern." Mr. Holloway's jaw tightened. "I should have destroyed this place when I had the chance." The woman smiled, and that smile was wrong. Too wide, too many teeth. Emma gasped and looked away, but when she looked back, the expression was normal again. "Mom," she whispered. The woman reached one hand upward. "Come down here, sweetheart. I've been alone for so long." The railroad lantern suddenly flared brighter in my hand, and the woman recoiled as if the light had burned her eyes. For the first time, I saw her clearly. Her face was layered like two images slightly out of sync. Beneath Emma's mother's features was another face, older, gaunter, with hollow eyes and gray skin. Then another face beneath that one, and another. Dozens of faces, stacked beneath the surface like reflections trapped in dark water. Mr. Holloway saw it too. "That's not one spirit," he said quietly. "It's wearing all of them." The woman's expression hardened. "You weren't supposed to see that." The basement light went out. Darkness swallowed the stairs. The only illumination came from the lantern's blue-white flame. Something began climbing toward us. Not walking, crawling. I heard fingernails scraping across concrete, followed by the wet sound of joints bending in ways they shouldn't. Emma pressed herself against the wall, shaking. "Please make it stop." The lantern flickered again, and for a split second the crawling thing was visible halfway up the stairs. It was the woman's body, but stretched unnaturally long. Her arms extended several feet ahead of her, fingers hooked around the edges of the steps. Her head was twisted almost completely backward, and she was still speaking in Emma's mother's voice. "I'm cold, Emma." Mr. Holloway grabbed the basement door. "Help me." I lunged forward and pulled with him. The door moved a few inches, but something below slammed into it from the other side. Bang! The force nearly tore it out of our hands. The woman laughed from the darkness. "You can't keep me out anymore." The door shuddered again. Bang! This time a black hand appeared around the edge, fingers long and glossy like they were coated in oil. The lantern flame turned almost white. Mr. Holloway looked at me, panic finally breaking through his calm. "It's stronger tonight." "Why?" His eyes darted toward the nursery upstairs. "Because it heard the baby." A third impact hit the door. Bang! The frame cracked. Emma cried out. Then the baby monitor, which had been dead for nearly 20 minutes, suddenly came back to life on the kitchen counter. Static hissed through the speaker, and our daughter started crying upstairs. All three of us looked toward the ceiling. Mr. Holloway's face went pale. "Wasn't she with you?" Emma's eyes widened in horror. "I left her in the bassinet when I came downstairs." The monitor crackled. Then a woman's voice began humming a lullaby. Not Emma. Not the thing in the basement. A different woman. Soft, gentle, familiar. Emma covered her mouth. "That's my grandmother's lullaby." The humming continued for a few seconds, then stopped. A voice whispered through the monitor. "She's not in the bedroom anymore." The basement door exploded inward. The black hand shot through the gap and grabbed Mr. Holloway by the throat. He was yanked toward the darkness so violently that his feet left the floor. As he disappeared through the doorway, he screamed one final warning. "Get the baby out of the house." The door slammed shut behind him. The kitchen went silent. Then, from upstairs, we heard the nursery rocking chair begin to move on its own. Creak, forward, creak, back, and over the monitor, the unseen woman resumed humming the lullaby while our daughter cried somewhere we could no longer see. The nursery rocking chair creaked above us. Creak, forward, creak, back. The sound echoed through the house like a heartbeat. Emma and I stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at the baby monitor on the counter. The screen was still black, but the speaker carried the soft humming of an old lullaby, the same tune Emma's grandmother used to sing to her when she was a child. Our daughter was crying somewhere upstairs, but the voice on the monitor had just whispered, "She's not in the bedroom anymore." Emma was already moving before I could stop her. I grabbed the lantern and ran after her. The staircase felt wrong again. The air grew colder with every step, and I noticed fresh, wet footprints on the wood. They were small, too small for an adult, and they led from the nursery toward the far end of the hallway. The rocking chair stopped. Silence. Emma reached the bedroom first and threw the door open. The bassinet was empty. The blanket was still warm. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then Emma screamed my name. I rushed in, sweeping the lantern across the room. No baby, no movement, no sign of anyone entering or leaving. The window was locked. The closet was empty. The bathroom door stood open, and the light inside flickered weakly. Emma was shaking so hard she could barely stand. She was right here. I left her right here. The baby monitor crackled. The lullaby stopped. Then our daughter cried again. But this time the sound came from inside the nursery. The locked nursery. We both turned toward the hallway. The nursery door was standing open. I was absolutely certain I had locked it earlier. The room beyond was dark except for the faint green glow of the monitor camera. Emma tried to run past me, but I blocked her. "Stay behind me." The floorboards creaked under our feet as we approached the doorway. The lantern flame had shrunk to a thin blue point, barely holding steady. The crying stopped the moment we reached the threshold. The nursery was empty. The crib was empty. The rocking chair was moving slowly by itself. Forward, back, forward, back, and hanging above the crib, turning gently in the still air, was the mobile we had bought the week before. One of the little fabric stars had been torn off and placed carefully in the center of the mattress, as if someone had left it there on purpose. Emma whispered, "Where is she?" I raised the lantern higher. The room looked normal until the light reached the closet. The door was open a few inches, and from inside came the sound of a baby breathing. Emma heard it too. She took a step forward, then another. "Sweetheart," she whispered. The breathing continued, slow, rhythmic, exactly like our daughter when she was asleep. I grabbed Emma's arm. "Wait!" The baby monitor hissed with static. Mr. Holloway's voice burst through for a split second, distorted and faint. "Don't open." The signal cut out. Emma was crying openly now. "What if she's in there?" I looked at the closet. The darkness inside seemed deeper than it should have been. Then a tiny hand appeared around the edge of the door, newborn-sized, pale, curled around the wood and pulled the door open another inch. Emma made a choking sound. "Baby!" The hand withdrew. A soft coo came from inside the closet. I took the lantern from one hand to the other and stepped closer. The flame turned white. The breathing stopped. For one terrible second, the entire house became silent. Then a woman's voice whispered from inside the closet. "She likes it in here." Not Emma's mother. Not the copy. This voice was older, calmer, and somehow more frightening because of it. I pulled the closet door open. There was no baby inside. No shelves. No hanging clothes. The closet was gone. In its place was a narrow passage lined with damp concrete walls, descending into darkness at a steep angle. Cold air poured out of it, carrying the smell of wet earth and rusted metal. Emma stared in disbelief. That wasn't there. The passage was only about 3 feet wide, barely large enough for an adult to squeeze through. Faint scratch marks covered the walls, as if something had been dragged up and down the tunnel many times. And from somewhere deep below, our daughter started crying again. The sound echoed upward through the passage. Emma tried to push past me. "I'm going down there." I caught her shoulders. "No, we don't know what that is. That's our baby." The cry came again, closer this time. Then the older woman's voice spoke from the darkness. "If you want her back, come alone." The lantern flickered violently. A second voice answered from farther down the tunnel. My father's voice. "Ethan, don't let her come down here." Emma froze. I felt the blood drain from my face. The voice continued, echoing through the concrete passage. "It's making another room." A low grinding sound began deep underground, like stone moving against stone. The walls of the tunnel shuddered. Dust fell from the ceiling, and somewhere far below us, a heavy door began to open. Emma looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "What does he mean, another room?" Before I could answer, the baby cried out once more, and this time the sound came from directly behind us. We spun around. The crib was no longer empty. Our daughter was lying in it, staring up at the ceiling. But standing beside the crib, gently rocking it with one pale hand, was the little girl we had heard through the nursery door. She looked about 6 years old, with dark hair and a white nightgown. And when she turned to look at us, she smiled and whispered, "You were almost too late." The little girl stood beside the crib, one pale hand resting on the railing. She looked completely real. Dark hair hanging over one shoulder, a white nightgown that brushed her ankles, and bare feet that should have made a sound on the wooden floor, but they didn't. Our daughter was lying in the crib, staring up at the ceiling as if nothing was wrong. The girl smiled at us. "You were almost too late." Emma rushed forward before I could stop her. She scooped the baby out of the crib and held her against her chest, checking frantically for any sign that she'd been hurt. Our daughter was warm, breathing normally, completely unharmed. The girl watched with quiet amusement. "Where did you take her?" I demanded. She tilted her head. "I didn't take her." Behind us, the tunnel hidden inside the closet groaned again. The grinding sound of moving stone echoed up through the passage, and a pulse of cold air rolled into the nursery. The girl looked toward the closet. "It's opening faster now." Emma backed away from her. "Who are you?" The girl's expression softened. "My name is Claire." The name hit me immediately. I remembered the basement, Evelyn's daughter, the child who had died decades earlier. Emma whispered, "You're the girl from the monitor." Claire nodded. "I was the first child it learned." The lantern flame sputtered violently, and for a moment Claire's appearance flickered. Beneath the little girl was something older and hollow-eyed, like a shadow wearing a child's shape. Then she looked normal again. I tightened my grip on the lantern. "If you're trying to help us, tell us what's happening." Claire looked directly at me. "The house is building a nursery." Cold knot formed in my stomach. "What does that mean?" "When it hears a baby, it makes a room for the baby." Emma clutched our daughter tighter. "No." Claire's gaze drifted toward the tunnel. "It made one for me." The grinding sound stopped. Silence flooded the nursery. Then, from deep below, I heard a baby crying. Not our daughter. Another baby. A second cry answered it from farther away. Then a third. Dozens of infant cries echoed through the tunnel beneath the house, layered together until they sounded like a chorus coming from underground. Emma went pale. "What is that?" Claire whispered. "The rooms that were never emptied." The lantern nearly went out. The tunnel inside the closet brightened with a faint red glow, and I realized the light was coming from somewhere far below. Another red door. Then a figure appeared in the passage. A man was climbing toward us. He was moving slowly, one hand dragging along the concrete wall for support. When the lantern light reached his face, my chest tightened. It was my father. He looked exactly the way I remembered him during the last year of his life, thinner, exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. "Dad!" He reached the top of the tunnel and stopped just inside the closet opening. "Ethan, you have to leave. Right now." Emma stared at him in shock. The baby monitor crackled on the shelf behind us. Mr. Holloway's voice burst through, panicked. "Don't trust him." My father looked toward the monitor with anger. "Walter, there isn't time." The monitor hissed with static. "That's not Thomas anymore." My father turned back to me. "He's trying to keep you here until sunrise." The two voices were talking over each other now. "The tunnel is still open," my father shouted. "It's wearing his memories." Mr. Holloway yelled through the monitor. I looked between the tunnel and the monitor, unable to tell which one was lying. Claire stepped backward toward the crib. "You should listen to both of them," she said softly. Then she added, "Because they're both telling the truth." The room went cold. My father closed his eyes briefly, like he'd been hoping she wouldn't say that. "What does that mean?" I whispered. Claire looked at him. "He came back through the red door, but he didn't come back alone." My father's expression changed. For the first time, I saw fear on his face. The red glow in the tunnel brightened. A shadow appeared behind him, tall, featureless, watching from farther down the passage. My father stepped out of the closet quickly, trying to block our view. "Ethan, don't look at it." The shadow moved closer, and as it did, my father's outline began to blur around the edges, as if the darkness behind him were pulling on him like a tide. He looked at me desperately. "I can hold it back for a few minutes, but you have to take Emma and the baby and get out of the house." Mr. Holloway's voice came through the monitor one last time. "If he crosses fully into the nursery, the baby becomes the next anchor." Emma gasped. My father nodded once. "That part is true." The shadow behind him lifted one long arm. the nursery walls began to crack. Thin black lines spread across the plaster from floor to ceiling, and through those cracks I could hear the underground nursery, the cries of unseen infants echoing beneath the house. Claire looked at our daughter and whispered sadly, "It already knows her name." Then the baby monitor turned on by itself. The screen showed the nursery from above, and written across the wall behind us, in fresh black letters that hadn't been there a second earlier, were the words, "Room 15 is ready." The words appeared while we were standing there. "Room 15 is ready." Black letters spread across the nursery wall as if they were being written from the inside of the plaster. The paint bubbled around each word, and a thin stream of dark liquid ran down beneath the number 15. Emma backed away, clutching our daughter against her chest. "No, no, no, no." The baby monitor showed the same message from above, the camera angle perfectly centered on the wall behind us. Our own frightened faces were visible in the screen, standing in front of the fresh writing. Then the monitor added a second line. It appeared one letter at a time. "The baby belongs below." The lantern flame flared white. My father turned toward the tunnel behind him, and I saw the shadow had moved closer. It was only a few feet away now, tall enough that its head disappeared into the darkness above the passage. "Ethan, move," he said sharply. The shadow lifted its arm again. The cracks in the nursery walls widened with a sound like ice breaking. Through the gaps, I could see darkness that wasn't part of the house. An impossible space beneath the walls where faint red light pulsed like a heartbeat. And from that darkness came the sound of rocking chairs moving. Hundreds of them. Creak, 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 all slightly out of sync. Claire stood beside the crib, her expression suddenly frightened for the first time. "It's bringing the room up here. What does that mean?" Emma asked. Claire looked at the baby. "When a room is ready, the house stops pretending to be a house." The temperature dropped so fast that frost spread across the nursery window in a thin white sheet. Our daughter started crying again, but her cry sounded strange, echoing slightly, as if another baby were crying with her from somewhere far away. The monitor crackled. Mr. Holloway's voice came through, weaker than before. "Listen to me. The tunnel under the closet leads to the old storm drain. If you can reach it before the room finishes forming, you can get out." My father nodded immediately. "He's right." That agreement terrified me more than either voice. For the first time, they weren't contradicting each other. The shadow behind my father began to take shape. A smooth, featureless face emerged from the darkness, and black chains hung from its arms, disappearing into the tunnel behind it. It looked exactly like the thing I had seen behind the red door. The real thing. My father stepped backward toward it. "I can hold it here for a minute, but not longer." "No," I said. "You're coming with us." His expression broke my heart. "I can't leave the tunnel." The shadow touched his shoulder. Instantly, dark veins spread up the side of his neck. Emma whispered, "Ethan." I looked at her. She was staring at the baby. Our daughter's eyes were open now, fixed on the wall behind me. I turned. The message had changed. The old words were still there, but beneath them a new sentence had appeared. "She hears US." Then, slowly, another line formed. "Open the crib." The crib began to rock by itself. Forward, back, forward, back. Claire stepped away from it. "Don't let it touch her shadow," she whispered. I looked down. The lantern was casting our shadows across the nursery floor. The baby's shadow stretched toward the crib, and the shadow coming out of the cracks in the wall was stretching toward hers. When the two shadows touched, the nursery light exploded. Glass rained from the ceiling fixture. The room plunged into darkness except for the lantern and the red glow pouring through the cracks. A baby laughed from inside the walls. Not our daughter, a different baby. Then dozens of babies laughed with it. Emma screamed. The shadow from the tunnel surged forward. My father stepped directly into its path. "Go!" The darkness wrapped around him instantly, lifting him off the ground. Chains snapped tight around his arms and chest, dragging him backward toward the tunnel. "Dad!" He looked at me one last time and smiled. Not a frightened smile, a relieved one. "You were never supposed to come back for me." The shadow pulled him into the tunnel. The red glow flared. The passage began collapsing behind him, concrete cracking and falling inward. Claire pointed into the darkness. "Now, before it seals." I grabbed Emma's hand. We ran. The tunnel was barely wide enough for us to squeeze through, and I had to hold the lantern out in front while Emma carried the baby against her chest. Behind us, the nursery was coming apart. I could hear the crib splintering, the rocking chairs screaming against the floor, and the walls cracking open wider and wider. The monitor's voice followed us into the tunnel. Not Mr. Holloway, not my father, the faceless thing. It was speaking through the monitor in my own voice. "You can leave the house, Ethan." The tunnel shook violently. Dust filled the air. "But room 15 is already connected to her." Emma stumbled, and I caught her before she fell. The voice came again, closer now. "You can spend the rest of your life running." A section of the tunnel ceiling collapsed behind us. Red light flooded the passage. "Or you can bring her back when we call." Ahead of us, I saw a round metal hatch, the old storm drain Mr. Holloway had mentioned. I ran toward it, but just before we reached it, the baby stopped crying. Completely. Emma looked down. Our daughter was staring past us into the darkness behind us. And in a tiny voice that no 3-week-old baby should have been able to speak, she whispered, "He says the room is waiting for me." The tunnel seemed to stop breathing. Emma froze with our daughter in her arms, staring down at the tiny face pressed against her chest. And our daughter looked back at her with calm, focused eyes. Eyes that were far too aware for a 3-week-old baby. Then she whispered again, "He says the room is waiting for me." The words were soft and clear, perfectly formed. Emma made a choking sound and nearly dropped her. No, you didn't hear that. Ethan, tell me you didn't hear that." But I had. The lantern flame shrank to a thin blue thread, and the darkness behind us began moving faster. Red light pulsed through the collapsing tunnel like a heartbeat, growing brighter with each second. The faceless thing's voice echoed through the passage in my own voice. "She can hear us now." I grabbed the storm drain hatch and pulled. It didn't move. Rust had fused it shut. "Help me." Emma shifted the baby to one arm and grabbed the hatch with her free hand. We pulled together while dust rained from the ceiling around us. Behind us, something stepped into the tunnel. Not the shadow, actual footsteps, heavy, deliberate. The baby turned her head toward the sound and smiled. My blood went cold. She reached one tiny hand into the air, toward the darkness, the way infants reach for a familiar face. "Dad," she whispered. Emma broke. She pressed the baby against her shoulder and sobbed, "Please stop talking. Please stop." The footsteps kept coming. I looked back. At the far end of the tunnel, illuminated by the red glow, stood my father. At least it looked like him. He was walking toward us slowly, his head slightly bowed, his work jacket hanging loose from his shoulders. For one wild second, hope surged through me. Then he lifted his face. His eyes were completely black. The faceless thing was wearing him now. It smiled with my father's mouth. "You left me behind, son." The lantern flared white for a split second, and the illusion flickered. Beneath my father's face was the smooth gray surface of the creature, with chains hanging from its arms and disappearing into the darkness behind it. I slammed my shoulder into the hatch. It groaned but didn't open. The creature took another step closer. "Open the hatch," it said gently. "Take your family outside. I'll stay here." The baby monitor crackled from somewhere behind us in the tunnel. Then Mr. Holloway's voice burst through the static, screaming, "Don't look at its face." I looked away instantly. Emma did too. The creature laughed. "Walter is still trying to save people." The hatch shifted under my hands. A thin line of cold night air slipped through the edge. "It's moving," I shouted. We pulled again. The metal scraped upward a few inches, just enough for moonlight to spill into the tunnel from above. Fresh air hit my face. The creature moved faster. The footsteps became a sudden rush, chains rattling violently behind it. I risked a glance. It was no longer walking. It was crawling toward us on all fours. My father's face stretched into a grin that was far too wide. The baby reached toward it again. "He's lonely," she whispered. The lantern went out. Complete darkness swallowed the tunnel. Emma screamed. I felt the creature's breath on my face, cold and damp, carrying the smell of wet earth and something ancient. Then, from above us, a flashlight beam cut through the darkness. A man's voice shouted, "Down there!" The beam hit the creature. It recoiled with a shriek that sounded like dozens of voices screaming at once. The hatch was yanked fully open from outside. A man in a sheriff's jacket reached down into the tunnel. "Grab my hand." I shoved Emma upward first. She passed the baby through the opening, then scrambled out onto the wet grass. I reached for the sheriff's arm. Behind me, the creature lunged. Its fingers closed around my ankle. The cold was instant, like my leg had been plunged into ice water. The sheriff grabbed my wrist with both hands and pulled. The creature tightened its grip. For one horrible second, I was stretched between the tunnel and the surface. Then the railroad lantern, still lying somewhere in the darkness, flared back to life on its own. Blue-white light exploded through the tunnel. The creature screamed and released me. The sheriff hauled me out onto the grass, and another deputy slammed the storm drain hatch shut. From below came a deafening impact. Boom! The metal hatch buckled upward. Boom! The deputies jumped back. Then suddenly, everything went still. Rain was falling lightly now. I lay on my back in the muddy yard, gasping for air, while Emma knelt beside me with our daughter wrapped in a blanket. The baby was quiet again, completely quiet. The sheriff looked toward the house. All the windows were dark. "What the hell is under there?" he asked. Before I could answer, our daughter opened her eyes. She looked directly at me, and in a normal baby's voice, she cooed softly. Relief hit me so hard I almost cried. Then she looked past my shoulder toward the sealed storm drain and whispered one final sentence in a voice that was not hers. "He says this is only the first door." The hatch beneath the grass gave a single metallic knock. Tap, 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 and somewhere deep underground, another baby started crying. The knock came again. Tap, tap, tap. Not from the storm drain, from beneath the ground itself. The deputies stared at the patch of wet grass covering the metal hatch. One of them slowly raised his flashlight, as though the beam alone could stop whatever was underneath. No one spoke. Then the knocking stopped. The sheriff looked at me. "What happened down there?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. How was I supposed to explain that my newborn daughter had spoken in another voice? That my dead father had tried to save us? That an impossible nursery existed beneath two ordinary suburban houses? The sheriff must have mistaken my silence for shock. "We'll get the county rescue team out here at daylight," he said. "If someone is trapped underground, we'll find them." Mr. Holloway. The thought hit me instantly. He was still down there. We spent the rest of the night in the back of a patrol car while deputies searched the property. By sunrise, the neighborhood looked completely different. Yellow police tape surrounded both houses. Crime scene investigators photographed the basement entrance. Utility workers scanned the ground with underground radar. And they found nothing. No tunnel, no storm drain, no underground chamber. According to every instrument they used, there was solid earth beneath both properties. The sheriff frowned at the reports. "That's impossible." I almost laughed. Impossible had stopped meaning anything to me. Around 8 that morning, one of the deputies approached carrying the railroad lantern. "I found this in the grass near the drain." He handed it to me carefully. The blue flame was gone. The glass was cracked, and someone had scratched fresh words into the brass handle. Not the last door. I hadn't noticed the engraving before, because it hadn't been there. Emma saw it too. It changed. Before I could answer, the deputy frowned. "What engraving?" He looked directly at the lantern. "There isn't anything written on it." I slowly turned it toward myself. The message was still there, perfectly clear. Only Emma and I could see it. The county workers finally forced the storm drain hatch open just after noon. Everyone gathered around. The sheriff climbed down first. 2 rescue workers followed. 5 minutes later, they climbed back out. It's empty. What do you mean empty? There isn't a tunnel. He looked genuinely confused. It's only a 3-foot drainage pipe. It ends after about 12 feet. I walked to the edge, looked inside. He was right. Concrete pipe, dead end. No red light, no collapsing tunnel. No trace of what we'd escaped from only hours earlier. Emma whispered beside me, "We're losing our minds." I wanted to agree. Then our daughter laughed. We both looked down. She was staring into the pipe, smiling. That afternoon, we packed everything we owned. Neither of us discussed it. There was nothing left to say. We loaded the car in silence. As I carried the last box toward the driveway, I noticed someone watching from across the street. An elderly woman, gray coat, white gloves. She stood perfectly still beside the mailbox. When I looked directly at her, she smiled. Then she tapped the side of her ear, as if reminding me to listen. I blinked. She was gone. We never drove back to that neighborhood. We rented a small apartment nearly 200 miles away under Emma's maiden name. For 6 weeks, nothing happened. No voices, no shadows, no baby monitors speaking in dead men's voices. Our daughter behaved like every other newborn. She cried. She slept. She smiled. Slowly, we convinced ourselves it was finally over. Then, on the 43rd night, at exactly 2:13 a.m., the baby monitor turned itself on. We had never plugged it in. The screen filled with gray static. Emma sat bolt upright in bed. "So did you." I heard it. Static crackled through the speaker. Then a calm female voice whispered, "Second door confirmed." The screen changed. Instead of our baby's room, it showed another nursery. Different wallpaper, different crib, different house. Standing beside the crib was a frightened young couple holding a newborn. They had no idea someone was watching them. The woman looked almost exactly as terrified as Emma had looked that first night. A little girl stepped into the frame. Dark hair, white nightgown, Claire. She slowly turned toward the monitor, looked directly at us, and whispered with tears in her eyes, "Please, save this family before it's too late." The screen went black. Then one final message appeared in white letters. "Door 2 has opened," and beneath it, a street address, one we had never seen before.